Wow. Okay. Thank you. Let's bring back to the stage director Tseng Ying-ting. Yes. And producer Tang Tsai-Yang. Thank you. Have a seat. Okay, if you've come to a few shows, you know that on the Q&As we have a volunteer on each side of the auditorium with pieces of paper and pencils for you to write down your questions. And I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so please flag them. They'll come to you and get those questions in. And I'm going to start with a couple conversation starters. Well, first of all, the Chinese title is not the same as The Abandoned, is it?
中文的片名跟这个 The Abandon 是不一样的。那当初是为什么会有这样一个设计？
虽然不一样，但是我觉得也是有所呼应，就是英文是主要是在讲这一群人的一个状态跟心境，那中文其实是想找到一个更贴近观众的一个词汇，所以查无此心，它其实来自于查无此人，就是常常我们寄信的时候想把自己的心意寄过去，可是常常那个信如果没收到，就会寄回来，上面盖了这4个字。那我们是用这个邮寄的这个名称专有名词来延伸出来的。
So even though they're different, but I do think that they echo each other quite well, and the literal translation of the Chinese title is "No Trace of the Heart," and it's very close to the term that the audience will immediately make connection with, which is 查无此人 means that no one is in this particular address. So when you send a letter out, and the post office will stamp on the letter saying that this person is not at this particular address.
Like Elvis saying, "Return to sender."
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I do think that the Chinese title is definitely closer to the audience, especially Chinese-speaking audience, to make that connection right away. Whereas the English title, I think it's more of the depiction of these groups of people, their situation, and the way that that life have dealt them with. So that's the reason why we have two different setups for the title.
And so we met 5 years ago, and the last thing I remember asking you was, what are you working on now? And you said, a screenplay about a policewoman. Go ahead.
5年前的时候，您来放你的最后的诗句的时候，他在 Q&A 的时候有问你说，你下一部片是要拍什么？那你有跟他提到过是你要拍一个有关女警的故事。
哦，对，就是这一部。
So this is it.
Right. So can you tell us where you were at with the idea at that point when we talked, and soup to nuts, how it developed with all these different elements?
那在5年前的时候，在谈论说要拍女警故事的时候，你在整个剧本或者在整个电影的方面，是在一开始的时候呢，还是已经有发展到蛮长的一段时间，还是就是在哪一个段落是5年前的时候，他在问你的时候，你是在什么样的拍片的一个状况？
我想应该还在一个朦胧的状态，就是那个时候有一个很强烈的欲望，想拍一个女警的故事。其实就大概这样子而已。我相信那个时候并没有想太多。
So at the time, actually, I wasn't quite clear exactly what I'm going to make, but the only thing I know is that I want to depict or I want to portray stories about female detectives. That's all I knew at the time.
And why?
为什么？为什么女警？
其实我喜欢这个警探的故事，就是这种类型的题材。然后再来是我的家人有蛮多是这个相关的经验，职业的经验。然后再来是上一次带着最后的诗句来这边的这个故事是一个大男主的故事，所以我是一个脆弱的男人的故事。然后，于是我就想说，我想拍一个这个有脆弱可是很 tough 的 女性的故事。
So I love detective stories. That's to start. And also my family members also have some connections in terms of police force, whether or not it's the job that they hold or that they have experience with the police force. So last time when I was here for the last verse, the film is very much about this particular fragile male character, and it's all about him. So I thought that for my next film, I really want to depict a female character at once fragile and tough.
I want you to talk more about the fragile and tough, but first, producer Tang, this is your first time collaborating together?
那这是第一次跟曾导演合作吗？当时 The first time as producer.
So can you tell?
For him.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell us how you came to work together? Have you done these kind of police thrillers before, and how it was the development story again, working together?
那怎么会有特别有这样子想跟他合作的？是因为一个剧本的关系呢，或者是什么样的因缘帮他做就是制片？
曾英庭是台湾现在几个非常有机会的年轻导演之一。我跟他碰面的时候是看到他写了这个剧本。那写这个剧本的时候，我觉得这个故事非常的有趣。所谓有趣，就是我觉得它不是只是局限在台湾一个地方，它是很多地方都有一个共同的这个问题。东南亚的移工往日本、台湾、新加坡、韩国发展，那中南美的移工往北美发展，北非跟东欧的移民往西欧发展。我觉得每个地方都有同样的这个问题。那所以当曾英庭把这个剧本给我的时候，我就决定就是说一定要把它找到资金，然后让这个导演能够好好的来发挥这个故事。
So director Tseng Ying-ting is one of the most promising directors currently in Taiwan, and after I read the script, I was very touched and also find the story very, very interesting. And the reason for it is because the story itself is not very Taiwan specific. If you really think about the illegal foreign migrant workers, it is an issue that you can see around the world. For example, you have migrant workers from Southeast Asia. They will go to Japan, go to Taiwan, go to Singapore, and go to Korea. And you have migrant workers from Central and South America migrating to the North America to find job and find a better life. You also have the migrant workers from North Africa and also Eastern European countries migrating to the Western European countries to make a living. So I do think that this is a very universal story, and I thought that I need to do my best to find all the money and the investments that we need to really actualize the director's vision.
Well, we have a bunch of questions to get to from the audience, so that's great. But just going back to what you were saying about having a fragile man and having a fragile and also tough woman. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the last verse, which we showed last time, you can see similar motifs. I'm going to say it right now. Why do you put your characters through the ringer?
那提到说，最后的诗句是一个脆弱的男生，然后这部片呢是一个柔中带刚的一个女主角。那为什么在这两部片里面感觉到讨论的是同样一个母题？那为什么是一直会想把这些不管是男主角或女主角都经过这么样的一个痛苦的经历，然后去拍这样子的母题的片子
？Thank you.
OK，我觉得这跟我个人的这个，就是人生可能跟每个人都有自己的母题啦，就是这个可能是我的母题，要如何跟挚爱的人说再见。我相信这个或许很多人观众一定有这样子的经验和难处，所以只是我也在学习，所以可能最后诗句跟这部片他同样在聊这件事情，可是我觉得态度可能有点不一样，可能是我稍微 变老了，可能是我成长了。那我想我未来还是会继续聊这个题目，因为我真的很害怕这件事发生。
So I do think that this is something that I've been examining all my life, and it's my motif, something that I want to examine the most, which is about how can you say goodbye to the people you love the most. So this sense of love and loss will be something that you can see in the last verse and also in this film, The Abandoned. But I do think that the attitude that I took to make these two films are quite different. And I think maybe because I'm getting more mature and getting older, and also the way I see things is a little bit different. So there are differences in terms of how I portray or depict and examine the motifs of love and loss differently between these two films. And I do think that this is something I will continue making going forward, but hopefully each time I will talk about love and loss differently.
Okay, yes, definitely Tseng's style, I say. Okay, it's getting late, but we have a lot of good questions that I want us to get to. First is, and you, producer Tang, you touched on this a little bit. What brought about the decision to focus on this aspect of society, the migrants?
为什么会片子想要注焦在这样的一个族群里面去拍？
For both of you,
外籍移工，两位都可以回答。
就是我刚才说的，就是导演一直很关注外籍移工的在社会上的一个弱势问题。那我觉得外籍移工不是只是存在在台湾，是所有先进国家都有这个问题在。那我觉得这个东西，其实当然这是一个类型片，但是在类型片的包装的后面，导演要探讨的还是人性的最底层。那我觉得这个东西，这个案子是可以拍的。
So from the perspective as a producer, as I mentioned, that this is a topic that's universal. And I do think that for director Tseng Ying-ting, he has been making films about this particular group, the foreign migrant workers, the people who are disadvantaged as a result of their roles and their lived experience. And I do think that this is something that you can see in all developed countries. And even though that in terms of its package, it is packaged as a genre film, but I think that the subject matter, it is something that we take very seriously, which is to really talk about the group that's at the bottom of society, that is so marginalized and so disadvantaged with the packaging of a genre film.
我想，多多少少都有，或许每个人都有当过异乡人的感受。那移工更是如此，就是他们从很遥远的地方，几百公里、几千公里，来到另外一个陌生的国度，可能语言不通，可能生活习惯差很多，宗教信仰差很多。可是他们想带着他们的梦想，不管是留在那个地方，或者是带着梦想、带着钱回家乡。我觉得这个勇气让我很感动，所以我会对这样子的族群特别想要为他们多聊一些事情。
So for this particular disadvantaged group, the illegal migrant workers or just migrant workers in general, I really admire their courage to be able to just pack their bags and going away for hundreds of miles to new countries without knowing the language or that very little language that you know, and very different environment, very different religions. And that kind of diasporas living far away from home, but at the same time trying to pursue your dreams and trying to hopefully make it big in terms of the financial, in terms of money and also financial well-beings. And those are the reason why I found this particular group especially interesting and something, the groups that I want to portray and want to examine.
So did you intend for the film to have a foreign audience? And if so, how did that affect the writing process?
在写剧本或者拍电影的时候，有没有一个特别的观众是在当做你的受众去这样设计？那如果有的话，这样对你的影片会有什么样的影响？
确实有想过我的受众会有哪一些。那当然最主要的还是我们的台湾的观众。那台湾观众其实对于移工的族群，相对之下还是比较陌生，甚至有一点点，maybe 是 抗拒的，所以得用一些这个说故事的方法，邀请他们进来，去看到我们的角色在经历的冒险是什么，然后他们遇到的这一群人又在台湾遇到什么样的情境，然后可以让他们感动，所以其实是希望可以让台湾观众看到这些他们平常不太容易接触到的族群，然后带着这样子看完的心情，带着分享给其他人，是这时候在拍的时候的一个很大很用力的一个目标和重点。
I did have certain audience in mind, and I tried very hard to really make that happen, because the biggest target audience that I'm aiming for will be the Taiwan audience. And people in Taiwan, I would say in general, tend not to have very clear understanding or very unfamiliar with this particular group of people, migrant workers, even though that they are among them. And also, I do think that they have this sense of distrust and resistance towards this particular group of people. So I do think that for me as a director is how can I find a way to find compelling storytelling strategies to get them in to really look at the challenges and the difficulties of this group of people, the challenges, the difficulty they face living in Taiwan, working among them. So I want to find a way in for them so that it will hopefully touch them, so much so that they would like to share with other people in the community. So that is something that I already had the intention right from the beginning, and I try my best and I strive for making that happen through the storytelling of this film.
Great. We just have time for a couple more questions, but I know producer Tang mentioned that it was not, I think you said it was not a Taiwan-specific story. Am I assuming right that you were also coming to this project, thought of it to get in, hoping that you could have an international audience as well?
那这边你刚刚说到这个其实是一个很普世化的话题，那当然说导演刚刚说是有台湾的观众在内，那你的自己的眼光是不是觉得说这不只是只有台湾观众可以受到感动，是全世界的观众看到这部片都会受到感动？
是这个，其实我们一开始的时候跟曾英庭在谈论这个案子的时候，那我们确实是认为这个是有一个全球的共通性。那我希望将来透过电影节的关系，或者是将来能够销售的关系，能够有更多人能看到。我觉得大家看到这个片子，我觉得不分国籍，应该没有那个界限，应该大家都能够有所感受。
Indeed, I do think that when we started thinking about this and discussing this with Director Tseng, we already talk about this as something that is very universal. All people around the world can relate to. And I do think that if we have the chance to show this film internationally through film festivals, or if we get to have the film distributed, I do think that it will touch all audience around the world, and we can really blur the boundaries of nationalities, and this is a very universal story.
我再补充一下，就是一开始的时候，导演这个电影的片名叫做《野鬼》，就是中国有一句话叫做“孤魂野鬼”，孤魂野鬼就是完全不受一个完全没有家可以归的一个游魂一样。那我们当初想到这个时候，就是说这些人，这些外国的移工，这些黑工，基本上在异乡，等于就是孤魂野鬼。你死了也好，消失了也好，不会有人在意的，不会有人注意的。我们一开始要探讨的就是这个问题。
And I want to add that when we were developing the script, the origin title for this film, it is actually called The Wild Ghost with Lonely Souls. And that's the literal translation of the Chinese title. And I do think that that really captured the essence of the experience of these not only migrant workers, but also illegal migrant workers, as if that these are wild ghosts, that no one will care whether or not they die, however they live. It is someone that is so invisible and so marginalized in Taiwan.
Wow. So we're out of time, but I must read this comment. I watched more than 30 films in this festival, and this is one of the best. I'm from Thailand. I want this film to show in my country. Not a question, just thank you so much for making this film. I want to watch it again and cry again.
看了30部影片，这是最棒的一部电影，然后觉得还会再回来看一次，所以很谢谢你拍这部片。
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Tseng and Producer Tang.
Thank you.
Thank you.